We are live today. Hello, I'm Carla J. Carpenter with Hollywood Gatekeepers. I'm very excited today. I just saw that we could put a video, which it said, you want to put your video up? I was like, oh, we could do a little dance party. Anyway, so no dance party today, but we do have a spectacular guest I'm very excited about. So I love doing these sessions where I get to introduce you to new people. And this person, I think, is if you were to like go into totally dating myself with this reference. Okay, if you're going to go online and you're going to Google, let's do it that way, and you're going to get an image, you're going to do all images, and you Google the word scrappy, this person will show up. A picture of them will show up. So we're going to talk today to Mr. Leigh Sheehan. He is an amazing producer, and the beautiful thing is he's coming to us from the future. He's in Australia. I'm in Los Angeles. So he is quite a bit of time ahead, so he can tell us all about what's happening in the future. So without further ado, let me bring him on. Hey, Leigh, how are you? Welcome from the future.
Hi, Carolyn. Hi, everybody.
How is the future going for you?
The future today is bright and sunny and a top of 29, which I think is around about 85 or something in Fahrenheit. So we're in the beginnings of summer, being December. So, but it could be 17 and cold tomorrow. I do live in Melbourne, Australia, where the weather comes, you can have that 4 times in one day. So, yeah.
That's what they say about Montana here.
It's like that.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have you and introduce you to people and, let people see you on all our different platforms. And then for those of you that are on our email list, we'll get you emails so that you can have more contact info with Leigh as we talk about kind of the differences between being a producer in Australia. But one of the things that we really want to talk about today, because it's so timely, is the idea of when you have a story, one of your stories, and whatever medium you write it in, whether it's a short film, a book, a play, podcast even, how can you repurpose things? How does it work to have, more than one medium? And tell us a little bit about some of the, he has so many great stories of like, well, that didn't quite work. So then I did this instead. Well, and then that, and then you're like the Mr. Pivot.
Well, this is a classic story of this didn't work. and it didn't work like 30 years ago.
and a lot of times people say like, well, how do I do this in Hollywood? Or how do I get my thing done? And one of the mantras we have at Hollywood Gatekeepers is that there's no one way. It's like, there's just so many ways you can do things. And the people that kind of think that you have to do it like this, and there's these different channels you have to go through and blah, 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 all that is to me is an excuse not to do anything. So you're such a great example of someone who doesn't do that at all. You're just so about like, well, let's, that didn't go, let's do this. So give us a couple of examples or an example.
Well, I think the one you're referencing there, a number of years ago, I was going to write a book and I started to write a book, but I'm such a film person. I just couldn't get my hair. Every time I wrote something, I go, oh, I want to see that. So I ended up writing a screenplay and it was called Deadlock. And it was about a Russian ship visiting San Francisco on a diplomatic mission during the time of the breakup of the Soviet Union. And this Russian ship holds San Francisco to a hostage. And it's kind of like the Hunt for Red October meets Die Hard sort of thing. Yeah. Anyway, I rang a friend of mine in Hollywood who's an actor, and I said, hey, Richard, would you like to play this role? And he said, it's really funny. He said, I've just been asked to do a part in a film with Steven Seagal, and it was called Battleship at that stage, where it ended up becoming Under Siege. And I went, that sounds a little bit like me. But I persisted with the script, and I hung around with it for quite a while. I put it to the film office here in Sydney, who really liked it and said, if you can get a big budget and a big action director, this movie will work. I didn't plan on them to get another director. I always write stuff that I'm going to direct. And so I think when you write stuff that you're going to direct, you sometimes can restrict your thinking a little bit because you kind of think about budgets and the logistics of making the film. And that's a mistake I've learned since. So I didn't. But when early days, I would do that. I go, oh, well, I can't do this because that's going to cost too much, especially in Australia, where we don't have the big studio systems where they'll throw $100 million and they'll even throw you some money to develop. We don't really have that here. So I sat around on it. And then earlier this year, I got the script out again. I thought, you know what I should do is I should turn that into a book and try and flip it back the other way. Yeah. Because, as you know, Hollywood kind of likes to see things that that have a track record, or at least there's something else that's not just the movie, because there's a lot of spec scripts out there, and they're very difficult to navigate through the studio systems or anything. So I rewrote it as a book, and writing it as a book really freed me up to go, wow, I'm not just stuck in San Francisco on this movie. I'm now in Russia, and I'm now in the Mediterranean Ocean on the USS Ronald Reagan, and all these sorts of things. So it really opened it up, and it opened it up fantastically. And because the story is still current today, though the situation was slightly different 30 with the breakup of the Soviet Union, now we have the Russia at war with Ukraine. So you put a peace mission going into San Francisco with the president, and these are fictional characters, bar one. So I had to keep Vladimir Putin because I just love the idea of him being in it. So I did that. And what it did do, it made me then go back to the original screenplay as well, because you write so much more for a book. You know, it's 100,000 odd words to do a book at least. So I've gone back, and the screenplay has now come back to life as a really great screenplay.
Yeah,
doing that. So that's just one example of doing it. And I intend to do it with a couple of other projects that I thought, well, geez, you know, they didn't go anywhere, so maybe I can do this. I can self-publish on Amazon and become the next Tom Clancy. You know, who knows? So,
exactly. Yeah,
I think they're the sort of things you've got to do.
Yeah, it's scrappy, being scrappy again. But it is so cool, and it is true, and especially nowadays where IP is so important. I'm working on an animated feature right now, and it's animation and it's a musical. So we have so much IP, and the manager immediately was like, well, all your IP needs to be in place before I even give the screenplay to everybody. So it's like, you know, getting that we have the coffee table book, and we have the music, and it's like getting like the doll and all the things that go with, because it is, you know, an animated piece that's making us do all this. And we actually started with a book as well. Like, started with a screenplay. We did a whole draft of the screenplay, and then the creator, he brought me in as the screenwriter, but he wrote all the music for it. He's amazing. His name's Adam Watts, and he did all the music for High School Musical and Camp Rock, and it's such a prolific artist. And so it's his baby, right? So he started writing a novel version, even though he wouldn't consider himself a novelist. But that gave me more insight into the kind of screenplay that he wanted. So now it's a completely different version than that first draft that we did, because that was just based on some ideas, and then I went running with it. Now I really understand by doing that. So like you said, you wrote a book about it, and then when you go to write the screenplay again, and so I had that same firsthand experience where we did kind of an outline, very loose outline, and then I just went with it, and then it turned out my vision of what I was seeing was completely 180 from it. It was like, I mean, it was more Pixar style, and he's more Nightmare Before Christmas style. It was like we were way off. So we did a cabin in the woods for a week, and we just or 4 days, and we just hashed out what it was going to be. And then he wrote the first 5 chapters of the book. And that was really, and now, you know, we want to finish the book, but we're now more focused on the screenplay again, because it gave me that, that turn. So it is. And we also have one of our students, Gary Thomas, who you guys probably, some of you know, he did a documentary about caring for his mother while she passed away of Alzheimer's. And rather than trying to make it a documentary feature, he submitted it to art programs. And now it's a touring art museum piece that tours, where you walk through the exhibit, and each section is a different screen that you see. So it's definitely a film that you're watching from start to finish. It's just broken up as you walk his journey. Just
fantastic.
So brilliant, right? So I love the idea that, especially now, because there's so much opportunity and there's so many ways we can create stories, that it's really exciting to think of all the different things that you can do with it.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now with it?
Well, just recently, I wrote a series probably 10 years ago. I wrote a movie 10 years ago called Close Personal Protection, which was about elite bodyguards to big business and stars and all that sort of stuff. And I decided that it would probably work better as a streaming 8-parter or 6 or 8-parter, because there's a lot more opportunity in streaming than there is in features, so to speak, you know. and there's a lot more demand because it's insatiable. They keep, they burn through that material like that, and so I rewrote that, and I rewrote a pilot based on the movie. So that was reduced down from 90 minutes or whatever down to 45 TV, 1 hour TV sort of thing. And we've got a real great bite on it straight away, straight out of the UK, because I set the story in Europe, but it's a story that takes place all over the world. But these guys are based in Europe because Switzerland and all the money and all that sort of thing. And I love it. And so I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we've got investors looking at it now, because that's in terms of if it was an Australian thing, we need private investment in. But I'm really looking more for an international deal on this, because I just think the scope is bigger and better. And when I plotted the 8 episodes and the story arc, which is really important when you're doing long form, it just really excited me, and it came together pretty quickly in terms of what we're doing. So whether once again it's a shooting crap game, as you say, and you got to get it out there. But the other thing too, Caroline, from when you write the book and when you go back to the screenplay, what I found that's really important, and I guess as a reader, and I've not been a script reader for people, but is how you engage the story. So I when I wrote in the past, I would write the big type pretty precise. We see a room and go into a room and a thing happens. I would write like that without too much description, but that's kind of boring. And I think working it the other way, where you tell a bit more of the story in the big type, it really engages the reader. Now, that may not be what the screenplay actually ends up like at the end, as you know.
Yes.
But it's a way to get the reader at the studio or whoever you're trying to pitch at, engage in the story, and they can see it, because the more you can kind of tell them in short things, not like big paragraphs, but short descriptive things that engage. And so I just picked the eye teeth out of how I was doing the book, and I've gone back and done it to a couple of my other screenplays.
Interesting.
And I think that's a really cool way, because you got I myself, when I do get scripts, I can get to the first page and go, no, I'm not going to read it anymore. And that's terrible for the person who's done 100 pages and thinks that. But if it doesn't engage, it doesn't engage. And that's, and you would know better than anybody, because of your experience. You go, do I really got another hour or so to read this? No. And so you just move to the next one. So
well, and it's so for those of you that write screenplays out there, it's about getting your script what we call reader ready, as opposed to it being, just a finished screenplay, that you might do some things in your first draft, or that's going out to pitching and that kind of thing in a little bit of a different way. Is what he's talking about, is making it reader ready, to where a reader will be enticed by this script for many different reasons. And also for those of you that are my readers out there that are becoming readers, being able to read a script. Well, one, as a reader, I always read. As a producer, I might not read the whole thing. If I'm thinking of producing something, I'm going to read it as far as, it'll continue to pull me in. As a reader, I read every page. So if I'm reading a script for someone, every page, every word, I read every word, because I really want to give that writer the best shot possible. So those of you that are trained to be readers, we read every word. As a producer, you're looking for something that's so specific. You might not read the whole thing, because it really needs to fit in. That you need to be inspired to spend money on it, to get people involved, all of that. So it's a little bit different. As a reader, we're trying to give that script the best thing possible. And when you are reading a screenplay, kind of some of the things that he's talking about, when you look at a screenplay, sometimes it can be, if it's too long, first of all, is a first clue. But if it has a ton of characters and a ton of things happening, it might be a series. Like, it might be in the wrong medium to begin with. Or if they're kind of trying to stretch a story, it might be a short film to begin with. Or it might be, it's like being able to look at it and see, wait, maybe this is just in the wrong medium, as opposed to it being, quote unquote, a bad screenplay. So I think it's really interesting, and the way that you're moving around and doing all that. And you've also talked a lot about, because you're in Australia, the way that you go about putting a project together is different. Whereas here in Hollywood, we're pitching it and we're finding, people. You're like finding investors, and you're like going to other countries, and like, tell us a little bit about how you get projects off the ground because you're in Australia. How is that?
So in Australia, probably my my most successful project is a film called Del Keith, And Del Keith was about a set in a retirement home. It was based on a true story. We had a show here, which was like a nightly news show, and it showed these old folks in an old folks home, nursing home, and they were given a share in a greyhound, and the greyhound was winning and making money, and these people were going out to the track and betting and making money, but it turned their life around a little bit in that instead of just sitting in their God's waiting room sort of thing, it gave them something to look out, to look forward to. So I really love the idea, and it was at a time when we had a couple of films. You might remember a film called Waking Ned Devine. It was a really big film. I really loved that film, and we had an Australian film which was similar called The Castle. And so I really pitched Del Keith in that vein, where it was like that kind of story. But to do that, I went to the usual suspects in Australia. That's the film commissions and things like that. And you know what their first response was? Old people don't watch movies. And I went, oh, rubbish. That's not true. And I actually went to Disney here in Australia. A guy called Alan Finney was running Disney. And Alan really said, old people don't watch movies. And I go, well, I think you're wrong, Alan. And I pitched that as a story to AAP. Old people don't watch movies. Well, I ended up being interviewed on just about every radio station in Australia, and I got TV as well. And that way I was able to raise interest in the movie, and I raised private finance. I've privately financed the whole film without anybody else. Now, we didn't go with a big budget because I'd worked in the industry for a long time in commercials and things, I knew a lot of people. And mostly crew people really want to do films and things. Whilst they do TV commercials, it's your bread and butter job, and they're fantastic, and you get to do great things. So we put together a budget. We got some really great Australian actors who, once again, if you know actors, you can talk to them and they'll do things for you. As you know, Carolyn, you've done it. You don't go to their agent, you go to them. So we were able to put together a really great ensemble cast, and we made the movie. We shot it I think we shot 16 or 17 days, which is pretty tight on a movie. But our experience, I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but I have really big experience in making things work on tight budgets and things. So, and we shot it Super 16.
Oh, wow.
Which is a beautiful medium to shoot. So we shot it that way, and then we did a cut, and we took it back to some distributors, and we kept running into this thing where they kept going, no, old people, you will never get them out there. And I just said, no, that's not right. And so what we did, I ran another story, and I went to the same guy at AAP, and I ran that story. And then what I had was independent cinemas contacted me, and we couldn't raise enough money to go out to a 35 mil release print. And this is 20 years ago. It seems like it's kind of weird that 20 years ago, we didn't have digital cinema.
I know, right? And not that long. I mean,
So what happened was I was working, my office was in a post-production company where I worked and did a lot of my post-work through this company. They were doing DVDs for Village Roadshow, which is a really big Australian cinema company. And I said, what if we put Del Keith on DVD and we shipped a projector out to cinemas? And that's how we got it out there. Del Keith ran for 3 years in cinemas in Australia.
That's what I mean by scrappy.
That's what you got to do. I mean, I had to take a second mortgage out on my house to help pay for it, but it was worth it.
That's awesome. I love that so much. That's so great. And it is, I mean, now because of streaming, of course, everything's much easier. And I think too, the old people don't watch movies, that's kind of gone out the window with some of the new series that have come out. I mean, and it's so great now where they have The Inside Man, that's currently a big hit on.
Yeah, I mean, Ted Danson's doing that. Yeah.
And so like a family member, she was able to watch it with her granddaughter. It's like, that's the great thing, is like we can have families watch things together when we do that kind of thing. And I love
it was great. I mean, my wife, who I didn't know back then, she said, I took my grandmother to see that movie.
Oh, how cool is that?
And I
Right?
thought, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's so great, right? That's what it's
So
all
it was great, and I still get remembered. In fact, it just got. We have a film critic here in Australia called David Stratton, who wrote for Variety in LA.
Mhm.
He really loved the movie, and he promoted it on television on like a film critic show. And
Mhm.
he's just published a book called The Australian Cinema A to Z. And Del Keith, in fact, all my films made it into the book. He contacted me,
Sweet.
and he just says, long before the best exotic marigold, there was a film called Del Keith, which is a gem of
Oh, I love
Australian
that.
cinema.
Well,
So
congratulations.
I am very proud of that. So
Yeah,
you
you
know,
should be. That's
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. It's so great. And I just love, so I wanted everyone to meet you, and we'll send out this thing to our email list, and then it'll be on our channels, because if anybody would like to be coached by Leigh, he does take on clients, and he can help you kind of, as you can see, he's very scrappy and very smart. So he can help you from the thing of like, you know, what is it that you want to do with your film? And then how do you get it done? There's so many different ways. And so, and you know, I'm a life coach as well as teaching reading analysis screenplays and writing screenplays now as well. You know, to me, it's managing your mind is the most important thing, and managing, like, realizing that there doesn't have to be one way, just always using your same creativity that you use to create screenplays and create characters to create the deal of making the movie. Like, what are the different ways it can happen, and what story can you tell in terms of the making of the movie? It's just as important. So I'm going to like put your website up so people can get that. And then for those of you not on our email list, you need to join, but everybody's on our email list, I will send this link out to you as well. But there you have it. It's basically his name. It's pretty easy.
pretty easy. Yeah.
Yeah. So just he's also giving a discount to anyone that's part of our world. So just contact him and tell him that you're part of our world, and you can have a discount if you want to work with him and have him take a look at your stuff and help you get it made. I love introducing people like you. We're going to continue our conversation in other ways that we might help people, because you're just such a delight to have in our world.
I love it. I love it. And it's for me, it's great too to be able to talk to somebody else with your experience. And that's
so much fun.
That's so much fun. And being you're in LA, you're in the beating heart of it, really. I mean, everywhere else is kind of like, you know, we're all trying to do that, but so you certainly know a lot. But it's cool
now too, in that, I mean, everybody's leaving in LA in droves, actually. So it is true about how you can, it's so much easier now to go, you know, do it from anywhere. So even if you guys are in like wherever, I love that you're in Australia right now. We're having this conversation. I mean, it's just like the world has changed so much. And so there's just so many ways that we can go about it. It's so much fun. And I just always enjoy talking to you and like sharing stories, and just, you know, your tenacity is such a gift. So to be able to share that with people and let them see, persistence is the key for sure.
It's all about that. It's all about persistence.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Leigh. It's so much fun. Thanks for joining us today.
Fantastic.
And we'll keep on keeping on.
Excellent.
All right.
See you, everybody. Thank you.